Sarah pressed the hot iron against the stiff collar of the white cotton shirt. She adjusted the steam, making sure the crease was perfectly sharp. On the oak table lay a thick leather folder. Inside were exactly 80 pages of medical research, a grant application for $2 million. Thomas had spent the last 3 years preparing it. Sarah folded the shirt, walked into the hallway, and handed the heavy folder to her husband. She smiled slightly, reaching out to brush lint off his tailored navy jacket. Thomas did not look at her. He took the folder with a swift, mechanical motion, stepping back to avoid her touch. "You're staying," he said. His voice was flat, devoid of warmth. Sarah lowered her hand. "The medical gala starts at 8. I have my black dress ready." "You are not coming," Thomas replied, checking his expensive silver watch. "Chloe is going with me tonight." "You look like a suburban housewife, Sarah. Even in that dress, you do not fit into my world anymore. Your hands are rough, you wear awful oversized sweaters, and you have nothing to say to board members. The divorce papers will arrive by registered mail next week." He turned on his heel. The heavy door clicked shut. Sarah stood alone in the hallway. The faint hum of the iron was the only sound in the empty Boston apartment. She looked down at her faded gray sweater and bare feet on the cold floor. The silence stretched for over 20 seconds. She swallowed hard, staring at the empty space where her husband of 12 years had stood just moments ago. She walked back to the living room, unplugged the iron, and moved toward the massive desk in the corner. She opened her encrypted laptop. The screen illuminated her tired face. It was the secure intranet of the Global Medical Research Foundation. She typed her login credentials using her maiden name, Director Sarah Jenkins. She found the application file submitted by Dr. Thomas Miller. For the past 12 years, Thomas believed his wife was a low-level data entry clerk. He never asked about her long video calls or the cross-country trips she took twice a year. While he built his cardiology career, Sarah managed a national fund distributing millions of dollars to medical innovators. She had financed his early residency and paid the rent for their first apartment. He took her sacrifices as his natural due. Over the last 2 years, Thomas had changed. He became the head of the cardiology ward, wearing custom suits and spending evenings at banquets. Then Chloe appeared, a 28-year-old pharmaceutical representative with perfect teeth and expensive handbags. Thomas stopped eating the dinners Sarah prepared, treating her like invisible furniture. Sarah looked out the window. Down on the street, Thomas was opening the door of his black sports car for Chloe. Chloe laughed, her red coat standing out against the pavement. The car pulled away. Sarah turned back to the screen. She moved the cursor over the green status bar next to Thomas's $2 million grant application, the grant that was supposed to secure his promotion. She clicked the menu, selected the red option for a strict executive audit, and locked the file. The gray wool sweater landed in the metal trash can under the kitchen sink. Sarah did not look at it a second time. The iron sitting on the board in the hallway was completely cold now. She walked into the master bathroom, turned the heavy brass faucet, and splashed freezing water on her face. For 12 years, she had played the role of the invisible, quiet wife. She had deliberately softened her edges, wearing faded clothes, staying in the shadows so Thomas could shine in the hospital corridors and build his ego. That arrangement was officially over. She opened the walk-in closet and bypassed the casual, shapeless dresses Thomas always told her to wear. From the very back, sealed in protective plastic bags, she pulled out a charcoal-tailored suit, sharp lines, structured shoulders. She paired it with a crisp, jet-black silk blouse. 30 minutes later, she walked out of the Boston apartment, leaving her spare keys on the granite counter. On the 42nd floor of the downtown financial tower, the glass elevator doors slid open. "Good morning, Director Jenkins," the security guard nodded, stepping aside. Sarah walked past the minimalist reception desk directly into her corner office, which offered a panoramic view of the Boston Harbor. She sat behind a massive glass desk and opened the physical copy of Thomas's 80-page application. She skipped the medical jargon and went straight to the financial breakdown. Page 45. A specific line item caught her attention. $300,000 allocated for independent pharmacological data consulting. Sarah cross-referenced the vendor tax identification number with the Foundation's secure database. The result popped up on her screen in stark black text. The vendor was a regional pharmaceutical subsidiary, the exact branch managed by a 28-year-old representative named Chloe. Thomas was not just leaving his wife. He was planning to use the Foundation's $2 million grant to quietly fund his new lover's corporate division and secure Chloe's commission. Sarah leaned back in her leather chair. The sheer arrogance of it was almost impressive. She picked up her desk phone and pressed the intercom button. "Helen, draft a formal summons for Dr. Thomas Miller. Mandatory in-person audit for Friday at 9 in the morning. Flag the account for gross conflict of interest." Across the city, Thomas pushed through the swinging doors of the surgical ward, pulling off his latex gloves. He checked his heavy silver watch. 12:30. He found Chloe waiting in the hospital lobby, striking in her bright red coat. They walked to the cafeteria. Thomas sat down, confidently opening his tablet to log into the Foundation's portal. He expected to see the green banner confirming his grant approval. It was the final step before his guaranteed promotion to the hospital board. The screen loaded. The background was harsh white. Across the center, a thick, flashing red bar appeared. Executive audit initiated. Funding indefinitely suspended. Thomas stopped breathing for a second. He tapped the screen aggressively, his face flushing with sudden heat. "Damn system errors," he muttered, pulling out his phone. He dialed the direct support line for the Foundation. "Foundation Executive Office," a calm female voice answered. Thomas used his most authoritative, impatient tone. "This is Dr. Thomas Miller, head of cardiology at Boston General. There is a ridiculous glitch in your system regarding my grant submission. I need it cleared immediately. I do not have time for bureaucratic mistakes." The assistant did not flinch. "There is no mistake, Doctor. Director Jenkins has personally locked your file due to severe financial discrepancies regarding your external consulting budget. You are summoned for an in-person defense on Friday at 9. Failure to appear will result in a permanent ban from our funding network." Thomas hung up slowly. Chloe asked him what was wrong, but he stared right through her, his confidence cracking. He had never met Director Jenkins, but her reputation in the medical community was ruthless. She was known for destroying careers over a single falsified invoice. Friday morning. The registered mail arrived at the apartment exactly at 7. The thick brown envelope contained the divorce papers. Sarah stood at the kitchen island, already dressed in her charcoal suit. She took her heavy brass pen and signed "Sarah Miller" for the very last time on the dotted line. She left the documents right next to the unplugged iron. 2 hours later, Thomas stepped out of his black sports car in the underground parking of the Foundation's skyscraper. He adjusted his tailored navy jacket, sweating slightly despite the cool air conditioning. He carried his leather folder under his arm, his jaw clenched in determination. He stepped into the elevator, pressing the button for the 42nd floor. He was preparing his best defense, ready to charm or intimidate whatever bureaucratic executive sat behind the desk. The heavy oak doors of the boardroom slowly opened before him. Thomas Miller stepped onto the thick gray carpet, adjusting his tailored navy jacket. He carried the thick leather folder under his arm, his jaw set in a mask of total confidence. The room was expansive, bathed in the morning light of the Boston skyline. At the far end of the long mahogany table sat 3 people. Two men in sharp, conservative suits sat on the sides. In the center sat a woman with her back turned to the door, looking out the panoramic window. Dr. Thomas Miller, the man on the right said. He had the unmistakable dry tone of a corporate attorney. Please take a seat. Thomas sat down, placing his heavy leather folder squarely on the polished wood. He pulled back his cuff, checking his heavy silver watch. Exactly 9 o'clock. I assume Director Jenkins will join us shortly? He asked, projecting his deep, resonant operating room voice. He was ready to charm them, to dismiss the audit as a simple clerical error. The woman in the center chair slowly turned around. Thomas stopped breathing. The air simply vanished from his lungs. His hands, resting confidently on the leather folder, twitched. Sarah sat at the head of the table. She wore the sharp charcoal suit and the jet-black silk blouse. Her posture was flawless, her expression entirely unreadable. She did not look anything like the quiet, invisible woman in the faded gray sweater. She looked exactly like what she was, the most powerful executive in the Eastern medical funding sector. Director Jenkins has been here the entire time, Thomas, Sarah said. Her voice was flat, cold, and entirely devoid of any warmth or anger. It was the exact tone he had used on her in their hallway just days ago. Thomas stared at her. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. He looked at the two corporate lawyers, who were watching him with professional indifference, and then back at his wife. The edges of his reality were rapidly disintegrating. Sarah, what kind of sick joke is this? This is a formal executive audit, Dr. Miller, Sarah replied, opening her own physical copy of his 80-page application. Everything said in this room is being recorded for legal purposes. You, Thomas stammered, feeling a cold sweat break out on the back of his neck. You enter data from home. I manage a national fund distributing millions of dollars, Sarah corrected him calmly. She did not raise her voice. She did not have to. I always have. Now, let us discuss your financial breakdown. Page 45. She did not wait for him to turn the pages. You requested $2 million, Sarah continued, reading the black text. There is a specific line item here. $300,000 allocated for independent pharmacological data consulting. The vendor is a regional subsidiary, managed by a 28-year-old representative named Chloe. You attempted to use foundation grant money to quietly fund your romantic partner's corporate division to secure her personal commission. Thomas gripped the edge of the mahogany table so hard his knuckles turned white. The sheer, overwhelming arrogance that had carried him through the last 2 years completely collapsed. She knew everything. He was not just caught in a lie. He was caught in federal fraud by the one person he had chronically underestimated. Transferring our funds under false pretenses is a severe violation of our network, Sarah said. Her eyes locked onto his pale face. Sarah, please, Thomas whispered. His expensive navy jacket suddenly looked 2 sizes too big for him. The illusion of his elite status shattered. We can talk about this at home. We are married. We were married for 12 years, Sarah said. She picked up a heavy brass pen, and the divorce papers you left on the kitchen counter, right next to my unplugged iron, were signed and filed by my legal team yesterday. The head lawyer slid a single sheet of paper across the table. Dr. Miller, the foundation is permanently revoking your current funding and blacklisting you from all future grants. Furthermore, due to the magnitude of the attempted fraud, we are legally obligated to report this directly to the Boston Hospital Board. Thomas realized the absolute totality of his ruin. Without the $2 million, there would be no promotion. With an embezzlement report, he would be immediately stripped of his position as head of cardiology. He would lose his medical license. Chloe would lose her job, and face federal charges. He pushed his chair back and stood up, his legs trembling violently. Right there, in the middle of the corporate boardroom, under the cold gaze of the two lawyers, Thomas Miller dropped to his knees on the thick, gray carpet. "Sarah, I am begging you," he pleaded, his voice cracking into a pathetic, desperate whine. "Do not do this. I will cancel the divorce. I will leave Chloe today. I worked 3 years on those 80 pages. You cannot take my whole life away." Sarah looked down at the man kneeling on the floor. She remembered the 12 years of meticulously pressing his collars, paying the rent for their first apartment, hiding in the shadows so his fragile ego could thrive. She looked at his heavy silver watch, the symbol of the shiny, arrogant world he thought she did not belong in. She closed the thick leather folder with a loud, final thud. "You are right, Thomas," Sarah said, standing up from her leather chair. She looked down at him with absolute indifference. "I do not fit into your world anymore." She turned toward the heavy oak doors. "Gentlemen, we are finished here. Security will escort him out. If you believe that true value is defined by character and not by expensive suits, leave the word dignity in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story.